Okay, so it's 8:01. Let's get started. So I'm thinking, before we get into anything, let's just take a moment to just get settled. So just maybe take a few deep breaths. And now that we've started to explore, and get familiar with the subject-object discrimination, let's try to get there right from the beginning. So maybe just take a deep breath and just exhale and just relax into the body. And just notice if you can feel the breath as an object in your awareness. And by doing that, you're recognizing that you're the subject. Cool. So just keep recognizing and remembering that you are the subject. And all of this is an experience that you're perceiving. All right. So welcome back, everybody. So we're getting, so we're almost at the middle of the book, and we're going to start. So far we have explored, and ideas have been presented to us about what we are not. And, we are not our bodies, we are not our minds, we're not our thoughts, we're not emotions. Why are we not all of them? Because they are all objects in our perception. And the idea here is that whatever is limited, which is every object in this world, including an internal object, including an external object, they are all limited. And we're going to, and we can see that we are always the subject, perceiving everything that is being illumined in our experience. So first half of the book was, we were looking at what we are not, and we are soon going to get into a section where we're going to talk about what we are and what, so, a lot of time we have to, so the process we learned last week was neti, which was, it is not this, it is not this. So I am not, I am not the physical objects that I'm seeing, I'm not the experiences, I am the one looking at the experience. So, it's always, we always want to be, we always want to take it as not a concept. We want to be, have a direct experience of this. So when you say, who am I? It's not about thinking about who am I. You are having that experience right now. You're eyeing right now. Like you're shining, and and because of that illuminating factor within you, you are experiencing this world. So who am I is the I is, you're having that experience right here, right now. So we want to say, who am I? I'm the one that is looking at this cup. Like that is you. It's not something outside of you. It's not an idea that you're going to get. You're having that experience right here, right now. And on that experience, we superimpose qualities and characteristics of the mind, the body, and we say things like, I am sleepy, I am hungry, I am tired, I am high energy, I am happy, I am sad. Those are all qualities that you experience, as an experience. So happiness is an experience that goes by. Sadness is an experience that goes by. So you're not, even though they're certainly something that you perceive, they're not you, is what we're trying to see. So that's the negation process that we see, which is neti. It is not this. Because what you are will not be something that you will perceive as an object. It's like trying to see your own eye. You don't need proof that you can see, right? You all are having the direct experience that you can see. And you can never see your own eyes with your own eyes. You can see a reflection of your eyes. Somebody can take a picture of you and show you, this is what your eyes look like, but you will never see your own eyes with your own eyes, because through your own eyes is how you can see. Similarly, you can never see yourself or perceive yourself as a separate entity, because it is through you that you are perceiving everything. So you are the instrument in that analogy as well. So you can never see yourself as an object. So we always want to have a direct experience, remind ourselves that we are having a direct experience right here, right now. So, you know, who sees the cup? I see the cup. That is yourself. On top of that direct experience, we superimpose things that we are not. So that's, so now we're sort of going to get into a section that is going to talk more about who am I. So far we have talked about what we are not, so let's get into it. Oh shoot, I forgot to connect my external monitor. So who would like to chant the Sanskrit today? Any volunteers?
I can chant.
All right, Sandarya. And anybody who would like to chant the English? Or not chant, but like say the English. Anybody?
I can do it.
Perfect, thank you, Ramya. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen. All right, so we're on verse 31. I think there's an echo, unfortunately, because Sandarya is in the same room as me.
Okay, somebody else chant.
No, I think it's fine. I can just mute when you chant. Actually, go for it.
Avidyakam shariradi drishyam budbudavatksaram etad vikasanam vidyaham brahmeti nirmalam.
The body and so on, up to the causal body, are objects perceived, and thus they are as perishable as bubbles. Realize through discrimination that I am ever the pure Brahman, entirely different from all these.
Cool. So here we are given this analogy that all our experiences are like bubbles rising up in water. And you know, everyone's had that experience when they're in like a swimming pool or in the ocean, and they can see bubbles rising up when you've eaten something, and you know, you can see bubbles, and they exist for a while, and then they go. You can kind of see them rise up, and then, you know, at some point they merge with the atmosphere, and then they go on. So similarly, we want to see that all of our experiences in this world, all the objects perceived in this world, have the same characteristic, which is that they are temporary, that they exist for a while. They, you know, they may not exist, and for whatever reason, you create them, and in your experience, they appear, and then they exist for a while, and then they disappear, and they go back into the context from which they appeared from. So you can think of like, so, you know, to have a direct experience of that is like, you can close your eyes, think of a thought, think of, you know, think of a beautiful tree. You know, it's like summer now, it's like flowers are blossoming. So think of a tree with like beautiful flowers. So you've created that tree in your own mind. Did not exist before. You had the ability to create it in your own mind. So now you have experienced it in your mind, and now you can drop it, and it's no longer there. So you can see that, you know, in your own mind, you have the same sort of perception of objects appearing like bubbles, and they exist for a while, and then they disappear and they perish, like this verse says. So realize through discrimination that you are the subject perceiving these bubbles, that these bubbles are constantly appearing, but there is something that is beyond these bubbles, and that is Atman, the I. And here they're using the word Brahman, which is the word we use to describe the universal consciousness. So, subjectively, you can say, I am the Atman, but actually, the Atman in me is the Atman in you and is the Atman in everybody else. And that word that we use to describe that is Brahman, which is, I am Brahman. And I am not just the limited sense of self or limited sense of uh, this individual consciousness, but I am universal consciousness. And this is the material. We will get to this maybe a little later, but when we say non-duality, this is what the material cause of everything in this universe is. This is the source, and this gets so I guess maybe you can get into it. So if you think of the tree that you imagined, what was the material cause of the tree? The material cause of the tree was you, which was your mind. Your mind had the ability to create it. So in every experience, there's essentially three things, which is there is a subject who is perceiving the experience. There is the experience, which is the object that is being perceived. And then there's an instrument with which you are perceiving the experience. So for example, if you're looking at a beautiful like sky or a mountain, the mountain is the object, you are the subject, and the I is the instrument which you use to have that experience. And you can go through all the five senses and you can have varied experiences, with sound, with taste, smell, right? So there's always an instrument. But when you think about a thought, which is also an experience, it's an inner experience, what is the object there? The object is a thought, which is nothing but the mind. The subject is also you, right? So if you say the mind is you, so the object and the subject is you. And what is the instrument with which you have perceived it? It's also you. So in those cases, both, so everything is essentially you. The subject, the object, and the instrument. So basically, the material cause of the thought was you. It's not like you had to eat some food to be able to think of that tree. Like you don't have to put any more energy to think of a massive mountain or think of a tiny, piece of rice or something, right? Both of them can be immediately imagined in your mind. So the material, so here we're getting a little technical. So the material cause of whatever this entire universe is the word we give is Brahman. And from Brahman, there are these sort of everything else appears to change. So we can say you are X, or like this is a cup, but the material cause is Brahman. We can, so I guess like at some point in the past we did the analogy of the clay and the pot. So if the material for all pots is clay, pot is just one manifestation, but I can also create a plate. I can create a doll. I can create anything, right? So the form that it takes is just a name that we give, but the material is clay. So similarly, the material of this world is Brahman, and the form that it takes is just based on whatever it is. So in this case, it can be a cup, it can be a human being, it can be a plant, it can be a rock. So those are the forms, but the material is Brahman, and that is the sort of consciousness that is sort of invisible and is the context to it all. And you are that. So you are Brahman in a way. Does that make sense? Any questions about this verse? Okay. So through discrimination, we need to realize that we are always a subject perceiving this entire world of experiences. They are bubbles. And the word here for bubbles is budbud, which is very it's a nice sort of, the Sanskrit has a language where a lot of words kind of represent what the experience sounds like. So budbud is like when you hear a bubble, you kind of hear the sound budbud. So it's pretty funny. Cool. So let's do verse 32. You want to do Sanskrit?
Yeah. Dehan yatvan me jan majaraksha. Oh my God. Jan majarakshaya daya. Shabda vishayai sangho nirindriyata nacha. Nacha.
I
Very
am
good.
other than the body, and so I am free from the changes such as birth, wrinkling, senility, death, and so on. I have nothing to do with the sense organs such as sound and taste, for I am without the sense organs.
Cool. So here we are getting a sense of, okay, since I am not all of the things, then what am I? So I am other than the body. So if you think of like things like any object, so the body is an object of perception as well. So we want to consider the body also as an object of perception. It just so happens that the body is with you, at least in your experience, it's with you a lot more than some of the other objects. But nonetheless, the body is also an object of perception. And the property of the body is that it gets born, it changes, you get older, so it like degrades and it gets wrinkled, and potentially your mind becomes senile, and then you die. Right? So these are all sort of experiences that our body goes through, because that's the nature of the body, which is it is limited, uh, it exists for a while, and it's constantly degrading in a way. um, so you are also illumining all of that. You are illumining. So if you think of you know birth, I always find it fascinating to think of, like, at what point was I actually born? Was it when I came out of my mother's womb? Was it when I, the sperm and the egg sort of like collided and became like, a combined embryo or something? Like, at what point would I consider like this is when I was born, right? So like you can kind of like go further and further. Like, am I created when my parents were born? Like, like you can keep going back. So there is some context in which all of those things are appearing. So, you can think of like waking up from a dream and you're experiencing this world. So in some ways, you're having a birth right there, right? So in every moment, you are birthing this entire universe in a way. This universe is coming up. So if you think of, I'm sure all of us here are fairly, you've had a lot of experiences in life. So if you think of like, let's say you may live in a different city, you may have lived in a different city, or you may have like, had a different job or like a completely different lifestyle, almost feels like that was a different life, right? Like you get a sense of like, wow, that was like completely different. Why is it that way? Because in reality, this entire body, this entire universe, it's being born every moment, moment to moment. It's a new and fresh universe being created, and you are perceiving it, which is why once you recognize this, it's very easy to change, because our resistance to change only comes with our fixation on some sense of identity that we have or that we want to grab onto. If you sort of see that you are none of this, that you are, you're not your perception, you're not your body, you're not your personality, you're not your mind, then change becomes very easy, because you see that in every moment I am creating these ideas, like, I'm creating these words that I'm saying. If I want to say something different, I can. If I want to be something different, I can, because in this moment I can be something different, and then I can go back and be something different in the next moment. So I have this full power in each moment to be whatever needs to be, whoever you need to be. Uh, and when you say whoever you need to be, whatever the body needs to be technically, because you're not the body. The body can do whatever it needs to do. So we want to see clearly that the body is something that is separate from me, and the body has properties of birth and death. So in essence, you are actually birthless. This is a scary proposition to say, you were birthless or you're deathless. You were never born. In reality, you were never born. Something was born for sure. The body came into existence. But, if you had a mind that was developed enough, then you could have seen the body appear as well. Like, it's very fascinating to think of, like, when we go to sleep, we our entire world of this waking world kind of disappears, and then we have a completely different experience when we are sleeping. And then when we wake up from sleep, we are born into this world, right? So kind of like, when it's kind of like poetic to think of when you come out of your mother's womb, you're sort of waking into this world. And that's literally what is happening every night when you go to sleep. When you wake up, you're literally, waking up from your mother's womb in a way. And when you're closing your eyes and going to sleep, you're literally dying. At least your waking world is being, in those moments, the waking world is taking birth, and when you're going to sleep, your waking world is going to death in some ways. So birth and death is happening at every moment. It's just that we have this idea of what birth is and what death is, and we confuse and we sort of take memory and superimpose a lot of that onto our present experience. So I'm getting a little like forward from what this verse is trying to say, but the essence of this verse is you are not your body. A body is a perception in your awareness. And the body certainly ages, the body certainly degrades, the body certainly has pain, body suffers, but it is not you. And the reason why we tend to identify the body a lot more is because the intensity of experiences in the body is a lot more. Physical pain is reason why we have, we have a nervous system is because when there's physical pain, we want to recognize that, oh, there's something is wrong, right? So there is a lot of physical responses in our body to inform us that we need to pay attention to what is happening. There's some sort of danger around you, but you perceive that as well. So you are not the body, even in situations which may appear to be crazy, but there is this gap that you can create, and you can see that even in moments when you're going through crazy, physical sensations, you can still take a step back and see that I am still that witness perceiving the body, perceiving changes in the body. And then the next part of this is I have nothing to do with sense objects. So, all of our senses, all of the objects that we are perceiving using our senses, the food that we're eating, the music that we are hearing, the beautiful images that we're seeing, they are all objects of perception, and they're only limited to the mind in some ways. The mind recognizes them. The mind says, oh, this is a beautiful sound, it moves me. This is a beautiful image, it moves me. But those are all sort of also being illumined in your mind. And you are not that, because you are the one that perceives it. So technically you are without sense organs. Sense organs are an attribute of the mind and the body. So they are also objects of perception. So you are that which is perceiving even senses. Isn't that cool? So we're going to get into this idea a lot more. But any questions about this verse? This is kind of a little scary because a lot of our ideas and society tells us that we are this body, and this is going extremely in the other direction, opposite direction, and that can be a little scary. But if you try to see it without fear, just with like, logically, also it actually makes sense. And then experientially, it will also start to make sense, because this is the truth, and you just haven't paid attention to it. Questions? Okay. Let's do the next verse.
Amanna satvanna me dukkha ragadvesha bhayadaha aprano yamana shubhra ityadi shruti shashanat.
I am other than the mind, and hence I am free from sorrow, attachment, malice, and fear. For the self is without prana and without mind, pure, and so on, is the commandment of the great scripture, the Upanishads.
So here we're given, the previous verse was more about the body, the things that we sort of consider to be true about the body. And now we're going, one level more subtle, which is talking about how we are not the mind. So characteristics of the mind are things we experience sorrow, we experience attachment, we experience fear, we experience joy. Those are all qualities of the mind. And you are other than that as well. So every consequence, so the consequence of having a body is that you're going to age. The consequence of having a mind is that you're going to experience emotions. So, fear, sorrow, attachment, and malice, those are all emotions. And that's the consequence of the mind. The mind helps us experience emotions. And there's no getting away from that. But we can recognize and see that those emotions are not you. Emotions, why do we feel certain emotions? Because of vasana and because of impressions. So, when I look at uh, my mother, I feel real joy. When I look at somebody else's mother who I don't know, I may not feel the same amount of joy. So like there's impressions of the past determine how I feel in the present moment. And those emotions are sort of consequences of having a mind. So somebody who is schizophrenic or has a mental disorder will feel very different sorts of emotions than somebody who doesn't have schizophrenia. But even the person who is mentally, in the psychological world, we call like with a disorder, still is not the mind. It doesn't change for them either. It's just that they may believe the mind a lot more. They may believe they are listening to a voice beyond them, which is still a something in their mind. So they're believing a different aspect of their mind. Um, we have this sort of voice inside of our head that speaks to us. But like, somebody who's schizophrenic, for example, may hear the same voice, but it's coming from outside. So they may think, God or something is speaking to them. So that's sort of the mental split. But the sort of phenomenon of, the subject and object experiencing is still the same. So, so your mind is also sort of an experience, and you're not it. And they say, the Upanishads are the source material of this work. And in this, tradition, the Upanishads are considered, everything that needs to be said has been written in the Upanishads about the self. There is no more exploration that you can do to go to the source. You can explore other fields of experiences. So, which is what, material sciences and things do. We're trying to explore physical aspects of this world. We're trying to get, understand the world a lot more. And that's like, that's an infinite process because there's infinite amounts of things outside. But the source is one. And the Upanishads have explored it completely and have given, and then, there's been like all sorts of tools that you have to get there. And that's sort of the authority in this work, which is why, you'll see things like, oh, it has been, this is the commandment of the scripture, the Upanishad. That basically is saying that since it's written in the Upanishads, it's probably true. And it's not that Shankara here is coming up with his own theory and saying, I have suddenly come up with this great idea. No, this has been true for thousands of years. And this, I think the Upanishads, I don't exactly know which Upanishad he's referring to, but Upanishads were written sometime, I think, in like about 1500 BC or 2000 BC. And this work was in 800 AD. So it's almost 2,500 years later. And that is still true today, which is, 1,500 years later from that. Cool. Any questions about this verse? So the practice we want to keep recognizing that I is other than whatever is being perceived. We want to keep turning back our attention to the source. Who is it that is illuminating this world? Does that change when I'm experiencing joy? Does that change when I'm experiencing sorrow? The illuminating faculty is always the same. Don't believe me. This is a hypothesis that I am giving you to say that you are the source. Uh, that never changes. Whatever you're perceiving certainly changes, but you never change. Notice that. See if that is true in your own experience. And only through remembering will you be able to validate that hypothesis. So you have to be a spiritual scientist in many ways. As you know, the teacher of my teacher says, you got to be a spiritual scientist. Take this thought and see if it's true in your own experience. That you are separate from the mind. You're separate from the emotions. Okay, any questions about this verse?
I feel like when, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I think I get all this when we read it, but I feel like when you're in the moment of being in the middle of an argument or feeling, if your body's feeling sick, it's very hard to practice this, break out of it and practice.
Yeah, and the reason for that is essentially our attachments and aversions. So in moments when you're extremely identified with whatever you're seeing, why are you identified with whatever you're seeing? Because whatever you're seeing has a deep impression within you. And the word we use is vasana. So that experience is essentially a vasana. And what is the property of the vasana? It has properties of veiling. So it veils who you are. You don't recognize that you are the witness, and you believe you are your body, or you believe you are the mind. And now because of that misunderstanding, you project onto that misunderstanding, and you try to solve the problem in many ways. You try to fix the outside world, or you try to fix yourself. There's only two things you can do in those situations. So give me a concrete example, Sandhya. What is a situation where you feel like you are unable to practice this in the moment?
I think more specifically, like if your body is feeling down, you tend to get cramps every month, especially women. Like it's very hard to ignore it and not feel like, oh, I just want to curl up and sleep and not do anything.
Yeah.
Versus saying, okay, it's just the cramps, it's not my body. Or like, I'm not the body.
Yeah, I think like the body is always the hardest to recognize in the moment, because like the physicality of it is so intense, the sensation is so intense. But what you can do is you can use reflection, or like introspection, or after your body has come to a normal state, to say, okay, while I was experiencing this last month or like last week, I was in a lot of pain. And this is sort of the property of my body, which is it has this cycle, it goes through this thing every month, and it's going to happen again in the future. So now when you enter that experience with this understanding, of course the sensation of it is not going to go away. I don't think this work is going to is telling you that you're not going to feel sensations. It's more about not creating more mental disturbances about the physical sensation. So there's definitely physical pain that the body will experience, but a lot of our suffering is not from the physical pain so much. It's more about thinking about the physical pain and wanting the physical pain to not be there. So we can get, I'm saying that there's a possibility, don't believe me, there's a possibility that you can get to a point where even the physical pain can be something that you can put on the side. Not that it will completely go away, because it is a physical sensation, but our attention can move to something different. You know, so for example, if you can think of, you know, let's say you're having deep cramps, when you go to deep sleep, where has that physical pain gone? So there is this ability of our minds to not feel physicality as well. So, you know, the teachings of yoga says that you can go beyond the 5 elements of your body. So in essence, we can get there, but I don't want to tell you something that I do not experience, that I'm not telling you that I can somehow control the 5 elements of my body. But there is a hypothesis as well, which is you can get to a point where even physical pain, you can go beyond physicality. So, so in practical terms, I think, you know, remembering that it is temporary is the first step, which is, yes, physical pain is going on, but it is a temporary experience and it is going to change. And while experiencing it, stay present in the pain, without trying to suppress it, without trying to, you know, think of think of something different. Stay with that pain, and then that you get to sort of hold the pain in a different sort of way. I don't know if that kind of answers the question, because I think physical pain is always much harder to deal with, but most of our suffering is not in the physical world. Like, sure, you get cramps, you know, not to say that it's not painful, but that is, you know, that's not why people kill themselves, right? Because it's not so much of physical pain, it's mostly mental agony. And that's where we want to sort of focus our minds as well and apply this there.
Puneet, I have a comment and a question both.
Sure. Hi, Priya.
Hi, Puneet. So comment first is just actually towards Sal's question. The comment really is just, even in medicine, there's a lot of work being done towards differentiating pain versus suffering, and understanding that even the connections in the brain, when we have pain, it's not just the pain areas of the brain that actually light up. When we have repeated pain, you see many different parts of the brain that include anxiety, that include emotion, that include memories. Those all actually become extremely activated, especially with repeated pain. And so a lot of the work that goes around it is for, especially for people who have to deal with chronic pain throughout their life, that they know is not going away. A lot of the work is being able to differentiate the suffering from the actual physical pain, and decreasing that those other sides of it, the memory side, the anxiety side, because there's many people that do have to live in pain. So I feel like what my understanding of this is going very parallel to that. I think that's very interesting. I think that's the Western world sort of slowly catching up to what these things have said. My question is, it's actually something just came from a comment you just made, and is a little bit dark, but I think it's an important one, because I have seen this quite a bit when people get into spirituality, depending on what their own mental state is. I feel like it can go two ways, whereas one way is obviously extremely helpful, but then the other way is, you know, we're talking a lot about how there that it's usually mental agony. It's usually this mental anguish that causes people to do extreme things. You know, and obviously the general most extreme is to kill themselves or hurt themselves in some way. And the one way this can be read sometimes is, okay, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind. But if that's true, then why was I given such a malfunctioning, terrible, this bad mind and body, and why not free myself from that? If I am not these things, why not free myself from that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer in this work is escaping is not a solution, because it doesn't solve the problem. So our limited understanding of this experience today is that if I kill myself, then I'm free. But how do you know that? What if you're born again with the same body? So this work says that there is a subtle body and then there's a physical body. So, when you die, your physical body is the one that, perishes. But there is a subtle body, which is this impressions, memories, experiences that we take to the next life. And the same subtle body is the one that will act again. So all of the impressions that you generate from this life will go to the next life. Um, and then, all the pain that you thought that you're getting away from this life is going to manifest again in the next life, and may not be in the exact same form, but manifest in different forms. So that's kind of how we answer the question in this work, which is escaping is not the solution. If you are conscious about what are you escaping from, escaping is basically not being okay with this current situation, right? I want the situation to be different, and I have an idea that if I kill myself, then this situation is going to be gone. But there's no proof to that. And that's not freedom. That's, this work is saying you want to be liberated, you want to be free. So if somebody reads this verse and thinks that killing myself is an option, then that's a false understanding of this work, because we are talking about liberation and we are not talking about escaping. So I view not dealing with what is in front of you as a cowardly way of escaping. And that's not the purpose of this work. But yes, you're right that a lot of people, that's why, having teachers and having somebody who's walked this path is very important, because like you said, somebody can read this and be like, oh, I'm not the mind and I'm not the body. Great, I can kill myself. And thank you for sharing that. That's very, very useful and important to think about. Does that answer your question, Priya?
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you. That is helpful.
Yeah, so we are not trying to hide and run away from stuff. We are the hypothesis here, or the theory that we are being presented, is if you are able to face whatever it is that your mind or your limited mind thinks it is incapable of facing, and it has to somehow suppress it, you will notice that that thing will dissolve, because you are beyond all the things that you are perceiving. And those ideas and those repeated sufferings and the repeated pains that we build up, and how do we build those things up? It's just by constantly thinking about it. And when you're thinking about it, you're creating a deeper impression. So it's sort of this sort of self-fulfilling cycle, where you have a painful experience, you think about the painful experience, you generate more pain, and then that becomes a more deeper painful experience, and then that experience comes up. So what we're doing is, so this is the wheel that our life is. So there's a word we use is samsara. It's the cycle of like experience pain, suffering, and experience pain, suffering, and we're just rolling. So what we're trying to do is we're going to stop giving more energy to the more energy and generating more energy to these experiences. We're going to stop that first, which is, I'm not going to give more energy to my existing painful experiences. Stop that first. Then, because you're not giving more energy to those painful experiences, automatically the the bundle of energy that each of these experiences or memories have will start to fade away. The painful process is to stay with that pain, because our natural habitual pattern is to escape. So again, we will think that, oh my God, this pain is too much, I need to run away. But if you just remember that all of this energy that you have to any experience, you have given it that experience. It has not magically come into your life. You have given it, so take full responsibility for what you're experiencing. Nobody has done it to you. Nobody's doing it to you. There's nobody out there that is harming you. You are creating every experience in your life. If you take the power back, there is nobody more powerful than you. You are the most powerful person. And a lot of society outside will give you contradictory ideas that you need to be a certain way, you need to be like this, you need to be like that. Those are all false ideas that we believe. You are the most powerful person in your experience. Nobody else is more powerful than you. Take that power back. by taking that power back, you can change your life. And that's the transformation that we want to go through. And not rolling along just because the whole world is doing certain things a certain way doesn't make it right. The whole world is in my opinion quite foolish, the way we live. But take it back. Stop the cycle of suffering. So first stop the cycle of suffering, and then the second process is apply these tools when those experiences come back again. And in those experiences, if you just stay conscious and present, you are destroying vasana, and you're destroying those impressions. So that is the process. And it's a painful process because, or at least you may think it's a painful process, but once you understand the mechanics, and once it starts, once you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, then it's no longer painful. And I promise you, it's going to end. There is a limited amount of everything in this world is limited, right? That's what we are learning. Everything has a beginning, everything has an end. Just so happens that some things take a longer time, but if I promise you that it will pass, it will end if you stay with it. And that is the promise in this work.
Hey, Puneet.
Hey, Karthik.
Hey, just sort of adding on to what you said and what Priya and Sandhya were saying. But so we are not the body, we're not the mind, but we spend a significant amount of time nurturing the body and the mind, and so we are and I understand we're not rejecting this life, we're not escaping from it, but what is the body and the mind then, and what is the value? I mean, how do you place this in this sort of new way of looking at yourself? Yourself is disassociated from these, but then, I mean, how do you justify protecting your body and your mind from decay and nurturing it? And these are practices we all do all the time. So
so if I'm understanding your question, you're asking, why do we spend energy like taking care of ourselves?
In a sense, yes. Yeah.
So the body is like a tool, right? It needs attention. You need to clean it every day. You need to feed it. Those are things you have to do. If you don't do it, then you will either become socially incapable of interacting with other people if you don't take a shower for more than 5 days, right? Or if you don't eat, then you will starve. Or if you don't poop, you will, I don't know what will happen if you don't poop, but those are things that the body has to do. Like, you cannot get away from it. So those are things that you do and everyone does, but it's not that you keep thinking about it, right? Like, so when you need to eat, you eat, and then once you're done eating, and then you do what needs to be done. So that's like the way to look at the body is that it needs attention, and attention will be given when the need arises.
Sorry. I mean, I guess I should reframe it. I'm sort of rethinking, because I'm disassociating the body and the mind from the self. I'm just wondering, what is the body and what is the value or position of the body and the mind in my life?
Like, why did you be born with the body? Why were you not born as a cockroach?
Yeah, I'm not framing my question properly, but yeah, that's. I mean, what is the value of the body and the mind in this understanding of the universe?
Yeah. So in this work, we say that the reason why you are taken a human birth and not a birth of another animal is because the human mind is the only creature that we know today that has the ability to reflect. Has the ability to think about what has happened and think about the past and think about the future. And that's the great, I would say, skill of the mind, right? No other creature has this. And the reason why we are so intelligent is because we have this ability to imagine things. Nobody else can, no other animal, at least that we know of, can do it. And this is both a power and a cause for suffering. Because if we don't know how to handle our minds in a certain way, then this tool becomes the greatest source of all of our misery. Because now you can imagine all sorts of misery because you have this potential, this ability to think about things. Now that becomes the worst possible thing if like your mind is only thinking about disasters all the time. The other side is you can think of the most beautiful things, and then your life becomes the most beautiful things. It becomes most joyful. So realizing that taking this human birth is actually a privilege that we have and not a burden. And this work is saying the goal of the human birth is self-realization, is liberation. Because once you're liberated, what is there to do from a compulsive standpoint? Right now, we think we have to do all these different things in this world. I have to, have a family, I have to raise them, I have to, earn a certain amount of money, I have to be a certain thing, I have to impress, I have to gain all these things. We have these ideas and these desires. Some of them may be out of compulsion and some of them may just be out of inspiration, no doubt. But what we're going to start to see is that all of them are actually the source of that desire is that we want to get back to ourselves, which is, we want to get back to the source. Because what happens when desires come true? Like the pleasure principle kind of comes back here. When I satisfy a desire, for a moment, I am experiencing the bliss of myself. And the bliss of myself is nothing but the self shining through, right? Shining through the mind. We are always seeking the bliss of myself. What happens when I'm, all my friends approve of who I am? The bliss of myself shines. What happens when I'm a successful businesswoman? The bliss of the self is shining. So all our desires are all lead back to the self. So the great thinkers of the past have said, this is actually what we really want. And there have been people who have gotten there and, and then life is, then nothing is done out of a sense of compulsion. All, Buddha and like, Jesus, Krishna, these are all sort of people in, in the past who have reached this stage. And it's not like they stopped working after they got realized. They actually did more work than any of us would ever imagine that we do in our lives. So it's not like you are going to stop doing work and then there's a sense of like, oh, I'm going to just become a rock. Absolutely not. Because of this infinite love that you actually have within you, you will just do stuff out of love. And so the body and the mind, I would say, is the way to reach the source. You have a human mind and you have a human body, and that's a privilege that you want to use to get to the source. So, there's another book in this work written by Adi Shankara, which is actually the next book we do after finishing this text, which is a more in-depth study of this work. It's called Viveka Chudamani. And in the beginning, there is a section of glories of a human birth, where he talks about why is being born as a human being so important? And why is it that, being born as a human is one thing, but then there's another sort of layer where like you're very lucky that you're being exposed to this work, because like half the world doesn't even know that this is even possible. And then there's another aspect, then there's even more lucky that you find some teacher who knows what they're talking about, who can take you there. And then there's an even more lucky that you can actually get there. So like there's this, that's why there's a tail end. That's why there's only one Buddha. That's why there's only one Jesus, right? Like these are human beings who had done something extraordinary that nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
All of our minds is focused on the physical, doing stuff in this world. And, there have been billions of humans who have been born, billions of humans who die. But we have the potential. Everybody has the potential to reach that state. And And it all depends on how much energy you want to put into it. And it's not difficult. It's just, so, my teacher says that self-realization is not difficult. It's just that nobody wants it. Why doesn't anybody want it? Because they want a big house, they want a big car, they want approval, they want those things. They do not want self-realization. In the end, you need to have a desire for whatever you want. Without desire, nothing is going to, even if you want to be successful in your job, you want to have the desire to be successful in your job. So that, and all desires, depending on how strong they are, that is the amount of energy you're going to put into that desire. So this work says you need to have mumukshutva, which is the word we use for the desire. It literally translates to the burning desire for liberation. So you need to have a burning desire to liberation, which is, I don't care about anything else. Like nothing in this world is more important than liberation. And that is true for any endeavor that we want in life. If you want to start a successful company, you have to give that 100% commitment. If you want to have a success. So if you want to be 100% in this work, so there's a question that comes that, oh, do I need to give up my life? Do I need to I think Arpan at some point asked a question, do I have to become a monk? No. So what you're doing is you're being 100% in everything. So you give 100% to this work when you're doing this work. You give 100% to, when you're at work, give 100% to the job, give 100% to your friends, give 100% to your family. You start living life to 100%. And then you'll start to see that when you're extremely conscious, when you're doing everything in life, all your desires will start to automatically fade away, because there are a lot of desires that we have, which are due to somebody else, due to like this sort of false understanding of this world, due to some compulsion, due to trying to get somebody's approval. All those desires have. So once you start to get a little conscious, those desires will start to drop. And there will be only very few desires that we would really want to do. And those will start to blossom. And, then life becomes much easier. It'll become much easier to do this work because, you have a lot more time, you have a lot more space to actually do this work. I kind of went off on a tangent here, but that's why we have a human body, and that's why we have a human mind.
That's very eloquently put. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for that question. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Puneet.
Sure. Hi, Debbie.
Hi. And I think, it's a little tangential, but what Priya brought up and what Sound was saying earlier made me kind of think of this. There are so many people who use meditation as a way to deal with physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you have a physical condition or some kind of chronic pain, you become, a master at meditation, and you're able to work through that, or you're able to heal your pain and stuff. Like there's stuff you read about that. There are documentaries out there about using visualization and all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is it that these people have been able to recognize that their over-identification with their mind and body is the cause of that, or what's going on there?
With people who can heal themselves?
Yeah, like using meditation to I used to have chronic back pain and now it's gone because I've been meditating for years now. There are stories like that. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on what's going on there.
I mean, so there's like an entire different, aspect of yoga that deals with these kinds of things, which is, Raja Yoga and Kriya Yoga. They're sort of like dealing it from an energetic standpoint. And I haven't really done a lot of stuff. Like I haven't found a teacher to, teach me those things. But like from what I have heard and read and had conversations with some of my other friends, what you're doing is you're getting, in the end, it's like a skill. You're good at playing a guitar. You're good at like anything. Like you can get good at it's called the 5 elements of your body. So you can sort of like start to recognize that there is this imbalance of certain elements in your body, which is why it's manifesting as pain, it's manifesting as certain diseases. So, you know, so that's kind of the work that you go through in those traditions, and you kind of become a master of your body, and then you can, you know, heal yourselves and all of that. So in the end, you know, there's a source, divine source in you, and once you start to touch that, and once you start to taste that, there are things beyond this world that we don't understand, or like you know, because Western, most of this world is now, you know, we accept things only if there's like this sort of scientific backing, which is this material way of replication, which is, you know, when something gets approved or not. These things are rare because these are such a subjective experience, and they cannot be objectively verified in that way. And it's hard to also describe in language so much, right? Like, how do you express these things in language? And which is why it's kind of rare to find it. And then whatever you read, you kind of have like, you have your own interpretation of it, because, you know, language can only say so much. And then on top of that, you are adding your own sort of, you know, understanding on top of it. So I would say like, it's not useful to get into that unless you have a person who you can, like, you know, who has the direct experience. Otherwise it can just become, you know, extremely confusing, and you don't even know if you're actually, what you're doing is actually true or not, right? And it can become actually dangerous in many ways.
So you're saying that's a separate thing from like what you're talking about, which is...
Yeah, I mean, but what you're saying, you know, once you get a little bit more conscious, you know, physical pain, like back pain and stuff, is I think is just energy being stored in the body, which is unresolved emotions, and they manifest as...
That's such a like nebulous thing. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, but you will, I mean, you know, once you get into this work, you'll start to see that, like you said, you had a direct experience of like, you had back pain, now it's no longer there. What happened? You can try to explain it in like some language and say, oh, it was like an unprocessed memory I was holding on to, and that was manifesting as pain. That may be your experience, but like, that may be your personal experience, but that may not be true to somebody else. They may say it was like because of something else, right? But there's no way to verify that, is my point. These things are very subjective, and if you could look at it from like an energetic standpoint, it's easier to say that it's just energy that is, you know, that you're just like moving energy. Energy is being moved, and energy is being removed from your body, or whatever it is. It's blocked somewhere and you're moving it out. But yeah, there's no satisfying answer in that way. Every tradition tries to answer it in a different way, because language can only say so much.
Yeah. I was just wondering. It's helpful to think about. Thanks.
Yeah, but you know, when you get more conscious and when you stay more conscious, then yes, physical pain is also something that you can control and then you can fix. Which is why, you know, yogis don't, like, you know, there's a lot of yogis who don't get sick. You think, you listen to like people who live in the Himalayas without any clothing, and they're just like, you know, hanging out in like one piece of like a loincloth or something in like the snow, right? Like, and they're not falling sick, which would be unimaginable to a person who lives in the city. But that's the power of the body, that once you get, you pay more attention to it, you get more control. And you're not sort of influenced by, right now it's like our bodies are like, you know, a little bit of suffering, you're like, oh no, I want to fix it. You know, it's like, it's too much, you know. Like, I used to feel extremely cold when I moved from India to here. I'm just like, it's like, Jesus, how do people live here? But then, you know, you get used to it, and then, you know, when you go to a slightly colder place, you're like, oh my god, it's so cold. So it's just about like, instead of trying to fix the stuff, let's see if you can stay with the discomfort, and then you start to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So it's not about finding solace so much. It's more about like, you know, breaking out, breaking free. And you know, there's going to be discomforts in life. Life is going to be, you know, life is life. There's going to be things which work and things which don't work, but you're going to be okay with both situations. It's not like you're going to get all the green signals in life and, you know, it's going to be blissful. It's more about riding through this life in a blissful way, irrespective of what's going on outside. And outside, I mean, even the body is outside, right?
Mm.
Because you're the source,
Mhm.
including the mind and the body and the physical world. Wow, great conversations, everyone. We have about, okay, let's do maybe one more verse. We have 5 more minutes before meditation. Did we do 33? Yeah, we did 33.
Yeah.
All right, 34.
Nirguno nishkriyo nityo nirvikalpo niranjana nirvikaro nirakaro nityamukto smi nirmala.
I am attributeless, actionless, eternal, formless, without any desire, thought, or modification, ever liberated and ever pure.
Cool. So this is describing what are the qualities of the self. Sat Chit Ananda are like some of the qualities, but these are some more, using more language to describe this. So all attributes are to the stuff, to the objects that are perceived. There's no attributes to the context. So we kind of want to think of like this the sky of awareness, and in the sky of awareness, there is stuff in it. So if you want to look at the sky and see that, what is the quality of the sky? It's just empty. There's actually no quality, or there's no attribute. It's empty. So in that way, it's attributeless. Actionless. All action is done by the body. All action is done by the mind. But the self does nothing. The self is just still, watching all action being done. Body is doing its thing. The mind is doing its thing. Physical objects outside are doing its thing. But you are just still, actionless, just watching. And how does action get done? Which is through, we spoke about the gunas, which are the qualities of the mind in one previous class, and then the vasana. Why am I doing the things that I'm doing in life? Because of vasana and because of the qualities of my mind in those moments when the vasana was created. So I like chocolate because I gave joy-producing properties to chocolate. I don't like, bitter gourd because I gave misery-producing properties to bitter gourd, which is a very bitter vegetable if anyone's eaten it. So those are the reasons why you do the things that you do. But, or rather, those are the reasons why the mind and the body does the things that it does. But you are actionless. You are still, illumining all of the actions of the body, all of the actions of the mind. So next idea is eternal, which is, you are always on. Even when the body dies, you're going to be on. So there's nothing to fear, even about the death of your body. Since you were never born, you can never die. The body comes to existence, the body goes out of existence, but you are the witness of even the body coming into existence and the body going out of existence. So which is why a lot of, in this tradition, or I guess in Indian culture, a lot of significance is given to the time of death, which is, I want to stay conscious when I am passing away. In the sense, like I want to be aware of that moment when I'm passing away, because it's kind of like, if you think about it, even dying is kind of like a dream, where this dream of your life existed for a while, and then you close your eyes and you pass away, and then your dream ends, and then potentially a new dream begins, or it doesn't. Don't know, but that's kind of how we want to think about it, which is this waking experience comes about like a dream, and this waking experience will end like how a dream ends. But there is something which is the context, which is always present, illumining the waking experience, illumining nothing as well. So when you die, the context is going to illumine nothing. There will be nothing to be illumined, because there's you no longer have a body. But that just means that you will no longer have emotions that is being illumined. You will no longer have thoughts that is being illumined. You will no longer have a physical sensations that are being illumined, because the body is no longer there. But something else is still being illumined, which is its, the context, which is, beyond the body and beyond the mind. So that's kind of how we want to think about it. It's formless because what is the shape of it? It has no shape. It's everywhere and nowhere. So it has no form. It's the context. So if you think of what is the shape of the sky, there is no shape of the sky. It is the context in which everything exists. So like, there's a cup in the space, you can move it around. So what is the shape of the space inside the cup? There is no shape. So that's kind of how we want to think about it. Without any desire, because, the self has no desires. All the desires are in the mind, and all the desires occur because of our past experiences and past impressions. You have a desire to eat pizza because you like pizza. Somebody else may have a desire to do something else because, because of their past. So all of the desire is separate. And so the self is without desire. So without thought or modification. So all thoughts, all changes, all occur to objects that are being perceived. You are the context, always still, unchanging, constantly illumining everything that is being perceived. And then the last idea is ever liberated. And because of that, you're liberated all the time. If you believe in what you are perceiving, then that's a false understanding. And you can think that I am somehow miserable, I am suffering. Those are all objects which are being perceived in your experience. And because of this false understanding, we identify with the object. So the quality of the object may be, I am feeling low energy, right? So because your body is feeling low energy. So you are illuminating the body being low energy, but you are not the body. You are standing, on the bank of the river, and the river is flowing, and in that river, you see body feeling low energy flowing by. That's also an experience. Or the body feeling pain, that's also an experience. But you are always illuminating that away, ever free, untouched by the experience. So tomorrow when your body heals, you will also experience that. So you did not heal, the body healed, and the body suffered. So you are away, untouched. And because you are untouched, you are ever pure. And pure here means you're just made of one thing. It doesn't mean like, good or bad or any sort of like, attributes that we think of purity. This has nothing to do with that. This is more about it's the same. So that sameness is there everywhere. In that sameness, there are all these other experiences that happen. And because of these diverse experiences that we have, we think we are somehow the experience. So we are happy, we are sad, we are successful, we are unsuccessful. Those are all experiences that are being illumined. And you're watching and you're untouched by any of them. Not to say that you cannot enjoy, you cannot participate, you cannot feel whatever you're feeling, but there is a clear understanding that I am untouched by whatever is going on. So I can go out and I can play in the field. So it's like, you're an actor playing the part on the stage, passionately performing your part because you love it. You love the game, you love the play. But then you know that whatever emotion you're playing on the stage is not going to touch the real you. That's kind of how we want to think about it. A lot of us in this group have, are into acting. So you can play a role of a character, and it can be a very sad character who's going through a lot of suffering. You can get into that frame of mind, but on a deep level that the sufferings of the character never touches you. It's kind of the same way, that you are untouched by this body, this piece of body that, people may say is your name, may identify you as a certain kind of a person, but you are not that. Those are all qualities of the mind and the body. So any questions about this verse?
I have a question, not necessarily this verse.
Mm-hmm.
So when we love someone or something,
Mm-hmm.
does our mind love that thing or person or pet or whatever it is, or is it ourself?
That's a good question. What do you think?
I don't know anymore. Because if we are untouched, if our self is untouched by any experience, does that include love?
So I guess it depends on what you mean by love. What do you mean by love?
I don't know, it's a tough answer. But when I say love, I mean potentially, I don't know, attachment. And I mean, I don't want to use the word attachment, but just whatever you feel when you either love your family or your friends or your
Mm-hmm.
pets or your kids or whatever it is, right? Or
Yeah.
even like hobbies, you could love doing something. When you love doing something or when you love being with someone, I don't know if now I don't know if that's your mind or yourself.
So there's like, it's interesting that love, there's actually no word for love in Sanskrit, which is very fascinating. There is a word called sneha or sneha, uh, which, has this sort of connotation of love, but it always has a negative connotation, which has this sense of clinginess. I want this person, like I cannot be without this person, I need this person. And that's kind of how we want to think about if that's the kind of love that is dependent, we want to think of love as unconditional, which is, the way my teacher defines it as genuinely wishing the genuinely wishing the welfare of this other person, irrespective of who they are, what situation they're in, but genuinely wishing well for them. That is true unconditional love. Doesn't matter that they're love you back, doesn't matter that they're in a certain place or a certain kind of a person, just genuinely wishing. That's unconditional, because that is our nature. Actually, our nature is that we have this infinite love. It's just that we give certain people love and then we don't give certain people love, and because of that we create this separation. There's actually no separation. We love everybody unconditionally, but because of our memory, because of our identifications, because of our conditionings, we look at one person and say this person is good, and then we look at some other person and we say this person is bad. Why? Because our memory is coming in and superimposing certain attributes. Maybe they were bad, no doubt, or they did something in the past, but memory is always um, taking you away from the present, and polluting in a way your current experience. Um, so to answer your question, like what was your question again? So it was like, what is love, or like how would you like think about love in this way?
Yes. So when you experience love, does your mind and body experience love, or does your self actually experience that connection with someone or something?
So you're always so whenever you're experiencing love or you're with a person that you really like, what is happening? The bliss of the self is shining through.
Mm-hmm.
That is all that is going on. That we experience ecstasy, we experience bliss, but that is, and what we're doing is we're superimposing on the person joy producing properties and misery producing properties. So if it's a joyful person who is in your experience and you experience really good, you will call it love. If there is a person who you don't like and it's producing like suffering, you will call this like, he or she is your enemy, or like, I hate this person, right? So we are attributing quality, like we are superimposing in those moments too. So, family and stuff gets a little tricky because it's just that we have experienced them a lot more than somebody else, which is why you feel more connected to them. But there's no reason why you cannot feel connected to anybody else as you do to your family. There's no reason. It's
Yeah.
just that our memory kind of comes into play when you think about family, because there's so many experiences you've had with them, right? Because you've spent so much time with them. But love is just, is if you are feeling blissful, then you're loving all the time. Like, what is love in the end? You're just wishing well for the person who's in front of you. That's how I like to think about it. Like, it's only when we want to try to see, is there some sort of clinging here? If there is some sort of clinging here, you're clinging to an idea or some sort of memory or something from the past, and you're not in the present. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, that helps a lot, actually. Thank you.
Okay, so any other thoughts, questions? All right, let's do a meditation. Cool, so everybody sit up straight. If you're lying down, make sure you sit up, maybe on a chair. Just make sure your back is straight and your head is balanced on your neck. Sorry, your neck is gently balanced on your shoulders. They're all in a straight line. Let's start by taking a few breaths, conscious, deep, long breaths. And on the exhale, just sinking into your body, just noticing that your entire body is an experience, an object in your awareness. You're experiencing your body right here. You can feel the breath going into your lungs. Feel the breath going out of your lungs. On every exhale, just sink in a little deeper. We want to see that we are not the body. Body is an experience in our awareness. So we want to use the tool that we learned last week. It is not this. It is not this. Neti, neti. So we want to see, who am I? Or what am I? I am that is illumining this experience. Right now my eyes are closed. It's quiet. Smells. And yet I exist. You may feel certain sensations in your body. Are you not aware of those sensations? So there's something that's illumining those sensations. There's a subject-object relationship to it. But you are always eyeing, illumining whatever that is coming up for you. So if you're thinking about thoughts, thinking about a memory, planning for something you have to do later today, those are also being illumined. So we just want to stop paying attention to those things and pay attention to the subject, to the source. You try to perceive, what is it? Or who is it that is illumining this entire world of diverse experiences? See if you can get a sense of this vast emptiness. And in those moments, there's nobody there. There's no sense of personal identity, your name, your personality. All of those things are gone. Keep turning your attention to that source, to that point. It's actually not even a point. It's because it's a point, it's nothing. both a point and everything, you could say. Like, where do you start? Where do you end? There's this sky of awareness, the context in which these experiences are being illumined. The body is being illumined moment to moment. You're experiencing a sensation now. The next moment it's gone. A new thing begins. So moment to moment, things are being born, you could say. And then the next moment, they die. The next moment, they're born again. So you want to see that everything is happening moment to moment. And see if you can notice that when a thought ends, it goes into nothingness. When a thought begins, it comes out of nothingness. This nothingness is the context. Even the voice in your head begins. It's there for a while and it goes back into the nothingness. That is also an object in your awareness. You want to keep turning our attention to this context. And that is there all the time. This I-ing or you-ing, you are happening all the time. And in this context are the diverse experiences of the body, of the mind, of the intellect. But the context is untouched. The context is always there. Has no qualities. Qualities are of the objects being perceived. The body has a quality. Mind and thoughts have a quality. The context is free of qualities. Don't believe your mind. So if thoughts are coming up, do not invest your energies into continuing that thought pattern or that thought flow. Just recognize that thoughts are coming up and you are not the thoughts. Just that recognition will stop the energy that you give to that story. And then maybe a new story would come up. And we do the same thing to that story. What you're doing is you're rewiring your brain to recognize that you are the context. Pay more attention to the context in which all of this is occurring, not the content. we want to do this not only in our meditation, but even if possible in our day-to-day, when you're doing certain activities that doesn't require too much of interaction with people, you can practice this introversion, this attention of turning your attention to the context, that all the work that you're doing, all of the objects are in this context. And this context, this awareness, this sky of awareness, that is you. You are that. Slowly bring your attention back to objective awareness. You open your eyes whenever you're ready. So we're going to end this meditation with a chant. So feel free to join in if you want, or you can just hang out. Yogarato va bhogarato va Yogarato va bhogarato va Sangarato va Sangavihina Sangarato va Sangavihina Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chitta Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chitta Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva. And it's the translation. So we want to keep reminding ourselves that we are the self. And if the mind can revel in the self, then you can revel anywhere in this world at any time. Cool. So that is the end of the class. Thank you all for awesome questions and discussions today. I really enjoyed that. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to hang out and we can talk about anything that may have come up during the last week, your own practice. But yeah, that's the end of the class, everyone.
Thank you, Puneet. Thank you for today.
Thank you, Puneet.
Thanks.
Puneet.